students, welcome to the lecture on the microsystem, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Explain oil and gas value chains industry, describe the value chain economics, define the downstream business environment, describe the upstream business environment, define the midstream business environment, understand major players in industry of oil and gas chain. Let's start with the concept of microsystem. The oil and gas industry encompasses the production, treatment, distribution and processing of a wide variety of hydrocarbon fluids, gases, contaminants and produced water. Each industry segment has unique measurement needs that are readily addressed with oil industry mass, volume and density measurement solutions. Operating and production companies all across the world rely on oil industry flow and density metering solutions to help optimize oil production and improve reservoir recovery and manage lift costs. Let us now discuss the oil and gas value chains industry. The oil industry has three levels: upstream, midstream and downstream, which encompass the main segments in the supply chain. The upstream level includes the exploration, drilling and production of crude oil, and the midstream level includes the transportation and trading of crude oil to refineries. The downstream level refers to the refining of crude oil into finished product, the storage of crude oil and the distribution and marketing of crude oil to wholesalers and retailers. The value chain analysis investigates the sequence of consecutive activities which are required to bring a product or service from conception and procurement through the different phases of production and distribution to the final customer. Such analysis can be done for individual firms, for clusters of firms whose value chains are interlinked, usually involving suppliers, distributors, sellers and customers, and referred to as value systems by Porter, or for selected industries within or across national borders.
Oil and gas are generated from a source rock, organic matter buried in the depths of the earth. Once formed, they climb back towards the surface. On their way, cap rocks can impede their progress and they accumulate in reservoir rocks. Here they constitute hydrocarbon fields, which can be identified by interpreting seismic data, a sort of echography. The data is obtained with the help of a seismic ship. To confirm the interpretations of seismic data, two types of drilling gear exist. Each is adapted to a range of depth of water down to more than 2,500 meters. The platform seen here is a semi-submersible which floats and retains its stabilized position by means of anchors fixed on the seabed. Platforms at sea are used not only for drilling but also for the production of hydrocarbons. This production consists of the separation of oil, gas and water before the oil and gas is taken by pipeline towards a mainland terminal. Where it's impossible or too expensive to link the field to the coast by a pipeline, an FPSO ship is used, floating production storage and offloading barge. On board, the hydrocarbons and the water are separated. The oil is stored prior to being loaded on tankers and the gas is re-injected into the reservoir rocks. Gas from a field is taken to land through an underground gasoduct to a processing plant. There, if the gas is to be transported by sea, it's converted into liquid, obtained by cooling it down to minus 163 degrees Celsius. When it arrives at the plant terminal, the liquid natural gas, LNG, is returned to its gaseous state in a regasification plant before being introduced into the local gasoduct network. The LNG is stored in tanks before regasification. The crude oil is transported in a petroleum tanker, the capacity of which can attain 200,000 tons. It's commonly called a supertanker. The terminals capable of receiving such giants are few and far between. The ships used to transport the crude oil produced on an FPSO ship are of a much smaller capacity. The crude oil, before being refined, is stored in the port in large capacity tanks. The natural gas is preserved in reservoirs, artificial or natural. It's ready to be injected by pumping into the gasoduct network for industrial and domestic use, or as fuel in power generating stations. As far as the crude oil goes, it's transported by oleoduct to the refinery. There it undergoes a number of transformations and blending. A variety of finished products are obtained: LPG, petrol, kerosene, diesel, or naphtha, which will be used as the basis for the composition of plastic products by complex petroleum chemistry.
Exploration. Exploration for natural gas typically begins with geologists examining the surface structure of the earth and determining areas where it is geologically likely that petroleum or gas deposits might exist. It was discovered in the mid-1800s that anticlinal slopes and a particularly increased chance of containing petroleum or gas deposits. Where do fossil fuels come from? Despite the popular beliefs that oil and gas came from dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus rex did not have a lot to do with forming fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are crude oil, natural gas, and coal. There are two theories about how crude oil and natural gas were formed. Some scientists believe that petroleum is the result of the decomposition of plants and animals, while others suggest that decaying plants and animals had nothing to do with it. Organic theory. The organic theory says that oil and gas were formed from the remains of plants and animals. Scientists who support this theory think that oil and gas were formed from the remains of small or microscopic plants and animals that lived in prehistoric rivers and seas. When these plants and animals died, they combined with mud, silt, and sand to form layers of the mixture called sediments. After thousands of years, a thick layer of sediment formed on the bottom of the sea. As more layers were added, the weight of the new layers applied pressure to the lower layers and turned them into sedimentary rock. Scientists believe that high heat and pressure, bacteria, chemical reactions, and other forces transformed these sediments into oil and gas. Inorganic theory. Other scientists believe in the inorganic theory that says that oil and gas were produced during the formation of the solar system and the earth. The inorganic theory is often used to explain why oil and gas are found in unexpected places and differences in chemical composition. The science of the earth. Rock formations. Geology is a science that involves the study of the earth and the earth's origin, composition, structure, and history. Geology is the key to finding new sources of useful earth materials and to understanding earth processes that affect our lives. Scientists who study the origin, history, composition, and structure of the earth and its life as recorded in rocks and other solid matter are called geologists. Production. The first oil discovery in the entire North Sea was made by the DUC Consortium in 1966 in a field later named Kraka. Completing the well. After a well has been drilled, it must be completed before oil and gas production can begin. The first step in this process is installing casing pipe in the well. Oil and gas wells usually require 4 concentric strings of pipe, conductor pipe, surface casing, intermediate casing, and production casing. The production casing or oil string is the final casing for most wells. The production casing completely seals off the producing formation from water aquifers. The production casing runs to the bottom of the hole or stops just above the production zone. Usually, the casing runs to the bottom of the hole. In this situation, the casing and cement seal off the reservoir and prevent fluids from leaving. In this case, the casing must be perforated to allow liquids to flow into the well. This is a perforated completion. Most wells are completed by using a perforated completion. Perforating is the process of piercing the casing wall and the cement behind it to provide openings through which formation fluids may enter the well bore. Tubing and packers. After cementing the production casing, the completion crew runs a final string of pipe called the tubing. The well fluids flow from the reservoir to the surface through the tubing. Tubing is smaller in diameter than casing, the outside diameter ranging from about 1 to 4 to half inches. A packer is a ring made of metal and rubber that fits around the tubing. It provides a secure seal between everything above and below where it is set. It keeps well fluids and pressure away from the casing above it. Since the packer seals off the space between the tubing and the casing, it forces the formation fluids into and up the tubing. Now moving on to the next topic, we will study the value chain economics. The following tables are estimates of the various cost components that make up the pump price of gasoline. The tables are based on a variety of sources and assume a crude oil price of 49 by B dollar and an average pump price of $2 gallon. The costs are based on data reported in the Oil and Gas Journal and Performance Profiles of Major Energy Producers 2007. The significant findings are that over 75% of an integrated oil company's net margins are in the upstream. Crude oil costs contribute nearly 60% to pump prices. Severance and gasoline taxes cost consumers nearly 52 cents gallon or 26% of pump prices. Company net margins for refining and marketing are about 20 cents gallon or 10% of pump price. Let's know the meaning of downstream business environment. The key aspects of India's business environment are foreign investment policy. India's foreign investment regime has been liberalized significantly since the late 1990s. All private sector refining projects have automatic foreign investment approval and may be 100% foreign owned. In the case of public sector undertakings, however, foreign equity have to be approved by India's Foreign Investment Promotion Board FIPB and cannot exceed 49% of total ownership. Transactions on the current account are fully convertible, though India retains several controls on capital account convertibility. While India has considerably increased the access of foreign investors to India's downstream sector through liberalization of foreign investments approval process, there remains significant behind the border barriers to investment. While foreign capital projects may be approved fairly, simplistically once approved, projects are required to meet a significant number of changeable, opaque, complex and slow-moving state and GOI authorizations and procedures for insurance purposes, demographic and environmental impacts, tax compliance, labor standards, etc. This considerable red tape acts as the key barrier to investment in India. India's Special Economic Zones SEZs and Export-Oriented Units EOUs were established largely due to assist business investing in key industries to skirt this extensive red tape. Tax policy. India maintains a relatively cumbersome tax regime compared to similar economies, for example, China and Indonesia. The standard corporate tax rate is high at 42% and the maximum personal tax rate is also high at over 33%. Capital gains on assets held for less than 3 years are taxed as income. Long-term gains are taxed at 20%. Most significant, however, is the myriad of taxes and duties levied on various products and imports and exports of products. At the level of the central government, domestically produced petroleum products are subject to a central excise tax, additional excise tax and a special additional excise tax, each of which is different from product to product. At the state level, products are then subject to a VAT, the rate of which is different from state to state and from product to product. Products are also subject to a variety of other taxes at the discretion of states, such as, for example, entry tax in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh and development tax in Haryana. Product is also subject to city taxes and levies in some locations, example Chennai and Hyderabad. Finally, imported petroleum products are subject to various rates of custom duty, additional customs duty and special additional customs duty, each of which is different from product to product. This complex, changeable and highly differentiated tangle of taxes and duties reduces margins for downstream marketers and retailers, assuming that all additional taxes cannot be passed on consumers. More importantly, as the 11th Five-Year Plan acknowledges, the tax system creates a business environment fraught with uncertainties, anomalies, and demographic complexities. One of the key components of regulatory reform under Policy Goal 4 in the 11th Five-Year Plan is to streamline, simplify, and standardize the petroleum product tax regime to ensure universal tax structures between jurisdictions and products. Thus far, little progress has been made on this issue, given the interest of states in protecting their revenue-raising autonomy. Legal environment. India's downstream legal framework is extremely complex, with a variety of often conflicting regulations still in place. India's court system in general is prone to lengthy delays, with most courts lumbered with numerous unsettled dispute cases. In ordinary cases, foreign downstream investors have to maneuver through a myriad of rules and certifications to obtain the estimated 70 separate approvals needed for setting up business in India, unless it is operating within a SEZ or EOU. Meanwhile, delays in hearings and judgments are routine. There is a perception within the international business community that in general India lacks effective respect for the sanctity of contract. However, there are increasing number of agreements that provide for arbitration, such as through the International Center for Alternative Dispute Resolution or in serious cases through multilateral conventions like the Geneva Convention. The establishment of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board PNGRB in particular has added a degree of certainty and oversight to downstream business practice. On the whole, the legal system governing India's downstream sector is in a state of transition, with the end goal of being more responsive to the needs of foreign businesses and the private sector. Currently, however, several shortcomings, primarily in terms of efficiency of procedure, exist in the legal system. Upstream business environment. The upstream business has become more challenging as companies seek to add value in an environment where oil prices continue to rise, costs are soaring, new reserves are becoming scarcer, and governments are increasing their take. In addition, new entrants are crowding an already competitive sector. Although the story of the oil and gas industry can be traced all the way back to October 1889, when oil was first explored in Digboi, Assam, India remains a vastly unexplored territory by far, with only a small percentage of its sedimentary basins under exploration and development. Exploration activity prior to NELP was dominated by public sector firms such as Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Limited, ONGC and Oil India Limited OIL. The sector received a major boost in 1974 when the massive Mumbai high fields were discovered off India's west coast. Even after 3 decades, these fields continue to be the mainstay of India's indigenous production. RIL is expected to be able to produce over 80 MMS CMD of gas by 2010 to 2011, thus doubling domestic availability and ameliorating the large-scale shortages currently prevalent in the country. The company has recently commenced production of gas, and the first 40 mm SCMD of gas volumes have been allocated by the government to fertilizer city gas distribution (CGD), petrochemical and power units. Upstream. Upstream segment operating at almost full capacity, drilling complex wells in highly hostile environments and at deeper, farther locations. Cost reduction required for economic viability of the E and P projects. Paucity of skilled manpower in the upstream segment. Priorities for the upstream oil and gas sector in India. Increasing the exploration intensity both onshore and offshore for covering the prospective sedimentary basins which are either not explored or poorly explored. Diversifying the supply sources for crude oil and natural gas by entering into long-term contracts wherever feasible. Acquisition of equity oil and gas abroad, both producing properties and prospective exploration blocks. Development of pipeline infrastructure for effective supply and promoting utilization of gas. Restructuring and its impact on human resources. While the industry must respond to external economic and business environment, industry leaders should consider the longer-term impact of those decisions in light of the challenge of creating, attracting and retaining skilled workers. Restructuring requires the industry to address the two human resource factors such as occupational supply and demand and shifting skill and competencies as required by the industry. It has also led to significant recurring losses of skilled workers. Regulation. The Indian Constitution plethora of legislation enacted by the central and state government and various international agreements set the context for the Indian energy regulatory framework. Government sets energy policy and legislative regulations govern industry actions. The current upstream regulation is provided by Director General of Hydrocarbons (DGH). The regulatory frameworks and processes that most affect human resources are those focusing on environment and safety, socio-economic benefits, and consultation with stakeholders. Life cycle stage. Each region, basin of the upstream petroleum industry is unique due to the nature of the resource itself. Example, heavy oil versus Arctic gas and its position on the life cycle continuum. The operational characteristics of the industry in any given region, basin of the country are closely related to the region's basin's position within the industry's life cycle. Regions near the beginning of the life cycle, such as Rajahmundry offshore, are managed differently from mature regions. It is critical to understand where each region is within the life cycle and use that context to frame recommendations for change. Midstream business environment. Midstream business is the first and only publication dedicated to helping subscribers monetize this booming sector of the oil and gas industry. Hot Energy launched Midstream Business in January 2011 after 2 years of dialogue with industry and finance professionals, conversations in which the demand for in-depth analysis and business market intelligence about North America's rapidly expanding midstream infrastructure became clear. The regional midstream logistics market, oil and oil product storage, also offers a positive growth outlook as crude oil consumption in the Asian region is expected to grow by 420,000 barrels per day each year from 2010 to 2015. The increased flow of hydrocarbons in the region will require additional storage capacity for transshipment, sales and marketing and trading purposes. At the same time, the region's existing trading hub, Singapore, is nearing full utilization. Major players in industry of oil and gas chain. There are various players in industry of oil and gas chain, fully integrated. These companies are engaged in all aspects of the oil and gas industry from exploration to marketing. The average consumer is well acquainted with these companies by virtue of their branded gasoline stations. The fully integrated companies or majors explore for and produce oil and gas around the world. own pipelines and tankers to transport this oil and gas, have refineries to process the crude oil into refined products and sell these products through a global network of wholesale and retail outlets. Independent procedures. Independent oil and gas producers are those companies that only explore and or produce crude oil and natural gas. These companies focus on their core strengths to compete with the major companies. They may have global operations and can range in size from under 25 to thousands of employees. Independent refineries. Independent refineries are those companies that purchase crude oil and process it into finished products. These companies may also own wholesale and retail marketing outlets, independent refineries and marketers, or sell their products to marketing companies. Many independent refineries are members of the National Petrochemical and Refiners Association. Independent marketers. Independent marketers are companies that purchase refined products, usually gasoline, and sell them at retail outlets. These companies would buy product from independent refineries or majors. This classification would include organizations whose primary business is gasoline sales, such as Racetrack and Quick Trip, and major retailers such as Costco, Albertsons, and Walmart, who sell gasoline in addition to other merchandise. Pipeline companies. Pipeline companies transport crude oil, refined products, natural gas and natural gas liquids using networks of pipes and pumping or compressor stations. Service companies. Service companies can range from organizations that rent drilling rigs to firms that build refineries. These organizations support the primary functions of the value chain. They can also include accounting and information management firms, financial institutions, and law firms. Trade and professional organizations. Trade and professional organizations support the industry and the employees. Trade organizations collect industry data, hold meetings, and advocate public policy beneficial to the industry. They generally have offices in Washington, D.C., where they conduct their lobbying activities. Now, in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. The upstream level includes the exploration, drilling, and production of crude oil, and the midstream level includes the transportation and trading of crude oil to refineries. The inorganic theory is often used to explain why oil and gas are found in unexpected places and differences in chemical composition. Geology is the key to finding new sources of useful earth materials and to understanding earth processes that affect our lives. Oil and gas wells usually require 4 concentric strings of pipe, conductor pipe, surface casing, intermediate casing, and production casing. Midstream Business is the first and only publication dedicated to helping subscribers monetize this booming sector of the oil and gas industry.